Phew. Oh, man, it stinks. Wow. Welcome back to another episode of My Legacy Garage. Part 3 of the old 55 Chevy here. I'm not going to lie, I've been working on it a little bit without the camera. Mostly underneath, because you can't really film what you're doing underneath there anyway. I'll take you under and show you real quick just what we did. Basically just mounted the motor and the transmission. But the goal today, well, for this video, probably longer than just today, is to make it run enough that it could possibly move. That's the idea. So in order to do that, of course, we need a cooling system, charging system, water pump, drive belts, etc., etc. Plus a fuel system, probably something a little better than a tank sitting on the roof. That'd be good. I think the old fuel tank might be usable. Looking, you know, from underneath, it's not all rusty, but I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, come along and see what we get into and what kind of headaches and frustration we find, because that's the name of the game, but that's why we love it, right? Nothing came to my brain right there to say that was witty and fun, so I guess we're just gonna start the video. Cool. The weather outside, well, it's frightful. Can't even open the door. Look, there's the old yellow C10. It snowed. A lot. I know what you're thinking. How long is it going to take you to make this car drive? And well, the answer is, I don't know, as long as it takes. They really took this thing apart. I mean, the engine and transmission were ready to come out of it. Let me show you what I found underneath of the car that was actually holding the transmission in. These two little itty bitty bolts. That is all that was holding the transmission. There wasn't even nuts on them. I don't even know what to say. Luckily, it's got proper bolts in it now. Let me take you underneath, show you what we've been working on real quick. There you can see one of the transmission mounts. The other one is over there. It's got the 4 bolts holding it in there now. Before, it just had one of those little itty bitty bolts on both sides, which was terrifying. It's a good thing I didn't try and drive it, because I hadn't noticed that before, at least not that I recall. And we also had to run a couple of motor mounts in it, which you can't see from down here, but I can show you up top. That's pretty much all we've done. Oh no, that's not true. There is one more really cool thing, but we have to go somewhere else to see that. Well, how do you like that? It's got a shifter in it now. All bolted up, linkages hooked up, the whole 9 yards. Even goes through the gears. But there's one minor little problem. Clutch pedal, you know, it exists. However, you can't really see it, but the Z-bar down inside of there. The Z-bar there. The linkage on the top is good, linkage at the bottom is good. We're down to the clutch fork down there, but we have no pivot point for it. It doesn't exist anywhere that I can find in any of the parts. I need to find that. I did find the clutch. Once we get that, we should have a functional clutch. I've also been messing with the brakes. I filled this reservoir all the way up to the very tippy top, pumped the brakes a few times, and it has gone down. It's not a very healthy color inside of there, but I am somewhat hopeful that maybe with just pumping the brakes, we can get these things to come back to life. I don't think there's anything wrong with the lines. They all look pretty solid. So maybe, just maybe, we can get this thing to have some brakes. The fuel door. Oh, that stinks from here. Man, whew. Yeah, that smells like 20-year-old gas to me. Doesn't look bad down inside of there though. Not bad at all. No cap though, that could be an issue. We're gonna hit pause underneath of the car for a second because, well, I got some cool new parts that I'd really like to put in this thing. Let me show you what I mean. As you can see, it's got a water pump on it and not much else. Well, that's about to change, folks. CVS is hooking me up. It's not sponsored or anything, I had to buy it, but they were super helpful. We got a whole kit with bracketry and everything here, new water pump. The fan didn't come from there, I got that elsewhere, but all the pulleys and everything came from CVS. And there's even handy dandy instructions to show you how to put it all together. And I was having a real hard time finding this stuff because this thing has fuelie heads on it with no bolt holes for the accessory drives in the front of it. And they came up with this kit, I don't know, 5 minutes on the phone, and they had me hooked up ready to go. So I recommend them seriously. If you're having issues, give them a call, they'll figure it out for you. Just a close up here at the front of the heads, how there's no accessory bracket bolt holes in them like a typical small block Chevy. Makes it really difficult for bracketry and everything, and the mix match of parts that I had here just wasn't going to cut it. So I called them up, and sure enough, they hooked me up, got me this whole kit. Now, it's not cheap. It was probably $500 worth of stuff I ordered. But it's going to solve all my problems. The car will be up and running, and I'll be able to enjoy it, which is what I'm after. We're going to go ahead and slap them in. First, though, you will notice the fuel pump is laying right here. And the issue that I'm having is the fuel line is awfully large, and it's missing the adapter for here for the line. This pump obviously has been on there a long time, and it's been on it while it's been sitting, and the diaphragm in it's probably all dried out in garbage, and they're not that expensive, so I'm going to go ahead and get a new fuel pump and put on it. And then we can hook the fuel line up, which is this guy right here. And then we'll put a little fuel in the tank and spin her over and see if we can get the pump fuel from the tank, what it looks like, and then we can decide if we can use that tank as is or not. Probably gonna have to put a filter in it somewhere, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. Fun fact about these small block Chevys. I know Revstoration, he struggled with this when he was putting the fuel pump on, but there's a bolt right here. It's actually a little short bolt. This guy right here, that is what came out of that hole. And if you take the little bolt out and put another much longer bolt in, it will hold the pin in there, the shaft that drives the pump. The metal arm that comes off and pushes on this to pump the fuel. Now the reason that's important is because if you don't do that, the pin, which is in this kind of raised groove here, just falls down against here, and then you have a heck of a time trying to put a new fuel pump on it. But if you just go ahead and run this bolt in tight against it before you take the pump out, then that stays there. There's a view at that little drive shaft in there that runs the pump. See how it's not slid all the way down against this outer casing? That's because that bolt up there is pressed against it, holding it in place. So that's just a fun little trick. I'm sure people who work on this stuff all the time know that, but I discovered that on YouTube, I don't know, years ago, and never realized it could be so easy to change a pump before. As you can see, I have started assembling this. I was just checking clearances and everything to make sure everything was going to work, and the fan wasn't going to be interfering with the belt and everything. And then I held it in the car just to make sure this fan wasn't going to be out so far, because this is a long neck water pump, that the fan was going to be hitting the radiator, and it looks like we're going to be way good. Speaking of radiator, I don't have one. I mean, I guess I have the old one, but I'm not sure how good that is. Either way, I started putting this together. Now I think we can go ahead and put it in the car. Well, that's not true, I lied. Let's do the fuel pump first, because that'll be a whole lot easier to get to without all this stuff in the way. What do you think? Let's go ahead and get this old water pump off of here and make sure there's not going to be anything else we need before we go to the parts store for the fuel pump. I think I probably need some fuel hose, a filter, whatever else I may need. Let's get this off, make sure there's no gaskets or anything that we're going to need, anything funky, bolt breaks, who knows what happens with these things, right? And then we'll go to the parts store and get everything that we need at once. That seems more efficient that way. That sounds good. I don't usually work that well. I'm impressed with myself. Good job. Fun fact, I've got my ground right here on this water pump. I'm probably going to have to move that, huh? I guess I could put it up here on this intake bolt. Just kind of grind that paint off of there so it makes good contact. That'd probably be wise. I'd hate to have it in the way of everything down here. I also noticed that the thermostat bulb, it's not anything either, so probably gonna have to sort that out. Or when we try and put water in it, we're gonna have it running everywhere, right out the side of the block. I'm hoping that they didn't do anything silly like take freeze plugs out of it or anything. From what I've seen when I'm underneath the car, I don't see any freeze plugs missing or even the block drains out of it. With any luck, if we put the new water pump stuff on it and put the thermostat bulb in it, it should be watertight, hopefully. There we go. Yeah, they had silicone and everything else on this. I'm gonna have to clean these up good. It shouldn't be too difficult, I wouldn't think. It's been a couple of weeks since I worked on the old 55 here, since I've been out in the shop at all, really. It's been busy, work is crazy, you know how it goes. Anyway, we're gonna pick right back up where we left off. We're gonna get the new fuel pump installed. Well, I say we're going to. I looked at it already before I turned the camera on. It's not gonna work. Let me show you why. This is the old fuel pump. And if you look really closely, you can see that this inlet pipe has been bent up, and that's so that it clears the frame rail on the car. This is the new fuel pump. It goes down there quite a bit more than this one even did before it was modified. So I tested this one by, pushing on the lever here, and I can hear it. So I think it's gonna work. I put this piece of pipe on here. I'm gonna have to cut it to length after I figure out where exactly I'm gonna need it for the fuel up to the carburetor. And we're just gonna put this one back on and hope for the best. What's the worst that can happen, really, right? Either way, that's where we're picking up. Let's get to it. We've got fuel pump on and the lines set up down there where they're gonna be hard to get to. We'll hook them up later. Next on the agenda is this nice shiny new crank pulley with its fancy pants bolts. So I'm gonna start putting that together, and then we can move on to the water pump. I figure this will just be easier to do without the water pump fan and all that garbage in the way, so I'm just gonna get it over with real quick. One downside to this kit that I got is it uses these 5/16 Allens, and I just dug through my toolbox and I don't have 5/16 for on a socket or anything like that. We have to do it the old-fashioned way here, which is less than ideal. Folks, she's got the drive kit on the front, fan, the whole 9 yards. I just have to go, get a belt. And then we got to hook that fuel line there up to that little piece of metal sticking out there, put some fuel in it and see what we can pump out of it. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. Still got a couple of holes to plug up for antifreeze. We need to put this temperature sensor back in. Goes in the side of the block over yonder, and then we've got a heater line right there, and then there's supposed to be a heater line in right there, so we'll probably get something to put in there and we'll just run a little heater hose between those two just to help circulate some extra coolant. I'm not going to run a heater in this thing because I'm not going to drive it in the winter anyway. And then what else do we have to do? Oh, we need some radiator hoses and a radiator. That would probably be helpful. Well, we'll see what we can do about that too. Why not? All right, let's put a couple more things together. All right, folks, I went to the parts store and picked up a couple of things, such as we have a belt now. We also have an inline filter. hooked up to the fuel line down there, down to the pump, over here to this little bucket so we can see what comes out of this thing. I put, I don't know, 3 or 4 gallons of gas in it back there. We're going to go ahead and fire it and see what comes out of it. Stay tuned. Top the float bowls off with some brake clean just to give it something to run on here. See if we can pump anything out of it. Well, hot dog, it was starting to pump a little crap out of there. Let's do that again. All right, again. Just about overflowed our cup of nasty here. I think I'm gonna go dump that out and then we'll try it again and see if we're getting anything maybe a little non-coffee colored through it. Cause that's just nasty. I wish y'all could smell this cause it's not good, not even a little bit. Got her all emptied out, ready for another try. See what we can get out of this girl. Better-ish. I mean, that's better than it was. Not that that's like a tremendous accomplishment or anything. Yeah, I mean, it's still, you know, it's kind of transparent this time around anyway. Let's try it one more time. All right, take 3. Let's see if we can get something burnable out of it. I don't know, that doesn't look bad to me. There's no silt or anything in it. It's just kind of discolored. I think that's good enough for it to run on. At least till we can cycle a full tank of fuel through it and get rid of all that nasty stuff. Phew, oh man, it stinks. Wow. It's the next day and I am, as always, short on time. I did a couple of things to this real quick. I'm gonna show you that, and then I think I got maybe one more thing we can knock out. Maybe 2, time permitting. We'll go over them real quick, but we're getting close, folks. We're getting really close to it actually moving. It's crazy, right? Yeah, it is crazy. I went ahead and put a heater hose on there after I put a nipple in the water heater just to get that accomplished. It's not kinked closed, but it is definitely kinked, you know, not quite closed. I think it'll be okay. If it's not, then we'll have to come up with a different solution. I did, in fact, get a radiator for it. Right there. However, I do not have radiator hoses. Well, that's not entirely true. I've got some flexi hoses over here, but I don't really want to use them, so I think I'm going to order proper hoses for it, which I don't have today. But we can get them. Anyway. Back over here to the car, what we're going to do right now is this wire right here is for the alternator so that it has a charging system. And it's obviously not connected. And not only that, but the alternator is no longer over here. It has to go way over there. So we need to lengthen this wire and reroute it and get it connected over here to the alternator, and then test and see if the alternator is going to charge or if we've got other electrical issues. So let's get that accomplished. I went ahead and got some 12 gauge wire here. To extend this wire out, we're just going to go ahead and figure out where over there it needs to go, how we're going to route it, and how much wire we're going to need. And then we'll cut it. And then I've got some heat shrink butt connectors here that we'll put on it, crimp down, and heat shrink to keep the water out of it. And I think I'm probably just going to run it, you know, it comes out right over here. And I think what I will do is fish it out, make it look a little more presentable here. And we're going to run it right across here, right with this wiring loom, down behind the battery and out to the alternator. That seems like it should work. Probably. I don't know why it wouldn't. Anyway, let's figure out where this thing's got to go. Got an eyelet put on the end of this thing so that we can hook it up to the alternator. Now we just need to heat shrink it, keep the water out of it. There we are. One beautiful electrical connection later. Now we just have to actually hook it up. Just like that. It's hard to see, but the wire's down there connected to the alternator and routed up in here behind the battery and across the firewall over yonder. Now we got to go over there and hook that up. So we're going to cut this wire right about here. Funny enough, you couldn't buy 12 gauge in anything other than a 100-foot roll. So now we've got lots of that left. We can prep this. This end is kind of jacked up. I think we're gonna trim that up a hair. And I think we can get rid of the tag that says it's for the alternator. It's pretty obvious. Alright. If y'all don't have a pair of these, I highly recommend it. Maybe I'll put a link down in the description. They're pretty easy to find, and man, they are handy. Auto stripping sure beats using a knife. Fun fact, I have literally no electrical connectors big enough for these. We're just gonna really redneck it up here and do a proof of concept to make sure our electrical system is okay, and just wire nut these together for now. At least until I can get my hands on a proper electrical connector. Alright. Now we get to test it and see what happens. Time to start it up and see if we have anything showing on the amp meter inside. Hopefully it works and we're charging. Well, there's no sparkies or anything hooking the battery up after messing with the wiring, so that's a plus. Let's see what we get here. Alright, amp meter says 0. Well, that was inconclusive at best. Let me show you why. Right there is the gauge inside here, and you can see it says 0. Then it has one little hash and then 30. It jumped up to just below that first little hash, which would mean you know, 12 to 14 volts. We're gonna have to break out the old multimeter and test it and see what kind of voltage we've got. As you can see, we've got 12.3 volts in that battery, which is probably the best battery I own. We're gonna start it up and see if that changes. Well, I think you almost have to take that as a win, don't you? What do y'all think? Hey, that's not bad progress, honestly. We got the front accessory kit on it, all that, belt, the whole 9 yards. We got the alternator hooked up. It appears to work. We still need the radiator, heater hoses, and we need to sort the clutch out. And then we should be able to actually drive it. The issue is I don't have heater hoses, and the piece that I ordered for the clutch, it doesn't work. It's this guy right here. It's supposed to go on the side of the bell housing, and then the Z-bar, you know, mounts to this little pin right here. But the problem is the pin isn't long enough and it's too fat. So I haven't figured out what I'm going to do about that yet. The other big question mark that we had, I actually solved accidentally. It's the brakes. Allow me to explain. Behold, the master cylinder. I had one heck of a time getting the lid off of that thing, hence pipe wrench. But that's what got it done. I got it off, it was bone dry. I filled it full, pumped the brakes, they were nothing, going straight to the floor. Let it sit overnight, came out the next day, it had brakes. I know, right? It's weird. I don't get it either. The only thing I can figure is the fluid had drained just down below that master cylinder, and it just sitting there with fluid in it, you know, the fluid's heavy, the air pushed up, it kind of self-bled itself, and now it has brakes. I'm not going to argue. I thought, well, maybe just the master cylinder messed up and that's why the brake pedal's solid now, but sure enough, if you have somebody spin the wheels for you and you hit the brake pedal, they stop. Yeah, that's what happens. So, hey, cool, right? That's one less thing we got to worry about. And frankly, man, we're close. We're really close. Close is where we're going to leave it, folks, because this video, it's getting really long, like movie quality. So we decided we're going to break it up into 2 separate videos. That means that's the end of this video. I'm sorry, I know. We really appreciate you watching though. And if you liked it, make sure you go hit the like button. Let us know, let other people know this is a good video to watch. It helps out the channel. And if you don't like it, hit the dislike button twice. Really let us know. And while you're at it, why not go ahead and click that subscribe button and even the little notification bell beside it, and that way you'll get notified when the next video on this car comes out so you can see how it turns out. At any rate, we really appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.